Opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the producer and those appearing in the show and do not necessarily represent the views of DairyCam, Town of Derry, or any of its staff or affiliates.
Hi, I'm Anthony Henry. Welcome back to America's Ask. We're on episode 60. 60 already. Wow, we're going quick. This season's going really quick. Anyway, I'm here with Eric Brakey. He is a former Maine state senator, and he's the new executive director of the New Hampshire Free State Project. Thank you for coming on. Tell us about yourself.
Hey, I'm glad to be on. Thank you for the invitation. I'm still getting to know New Hampshire a lot myself, so I'm a bit of a New Hampshire novice, but I've spent 12 years in Maine politics with family roots there. I got started as a staffer on the Ron Paul 2012 presidential campaign way back when, and you must have been 5 years old or something like that. After a fight with the GOP establishment in Maine, where we basically took over the whole state Republican Party of Maine, I ran for the state Senate 2 years later, got elected at the age of 26. I was the youngest state senator in the country at the time. I served 3 non-consecutive terms over the course of the next 10 years, with 4 years out as I ran for federal office. I was the Republican nominee for the United States Senate in 2018, and I ran for Congress in 2020. Things I'm known for during my time in the state Senate, primarily people know me as the guy who got constitutional carry passed in the state of Maine, but I also did a lot of work on welfare reform, making our medical cannabis programs more market-oriented, and a whole host of other policies along the way. But after 12 years in Maine politics, I was ready to pass the torch to other people and look for another way to be of service. And the Free State Project in New Hampshire was looking to hire a new executive director. I've been a fan of the Free State Project since I was first getting going in politics. I remember coming to Porkfest in 2012 and meeting the Free State community out here, and I felt like for a while we were having a nice, healthy competition between Maine and New Hampshire on who could achieve liberty the fastest. After a few setbacks in Maine over the last 6 years, I think it's pretty clear that New Hampshire has won that battle. And they say if you can't beat them, join them. So I'm here in New Hampshire. I think that New Hampshire represents a really important value prospect for freedom and liberty in New England. It's the only state where we are seeing liberty grow and the state shrink. Whereas in Maine and Vermont and Massachusetts, it's just a story over and over again of rising progressivism, taking more control over people's lives and our personal spheres and our economic spheres. And I think it's very important that New Hampshire be a state that stems the tide and plants the flag for freedom and liberty, and I'm really glad that the Free State Project gets to play a role in that.
So first thing I wanted to ask you, and Free State Project is very well known in New Hampshire politics. I think pretty much everyone that follows it well has heard the name. I don't think a lot of people actually know what it is. I think a lot of people have an idea of what it might be, or they might hear something completely incorrect. Honestly, I don't even know completely what it is. So, what is the Free State Project?
All right, well, let's talk about it. The Free State Project has been going on for 22 years now. It is a mass migration movement of libertarians to New Hampshire to live free or die state. And fundamentally, libertarians are coming here to reinforce and build upon the natural live free or die ethic that has been here in New Hampshire for the longest time. I mean, New Hampshire was already very much a libertarian state in many respects. Today, New Hampshire is ranked the #1 state for freedom and by multiple sources. And the idea was, this was started back in the early 2000s, a realization during the Bush era, that libertarians, those of us who believe in the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the foundational principles of our Constitution, we were once, at one point in this country, this was a libertarian country founded on libertarian principles. But over the course of several centuries, our country has lost sight of that. And so libertarians might be, there are millions of libertarians in America, but in any one place, we might be no more than, a small minority, not enough to really have an impact on the politics and the culture. And so the idea was, what if, rather than being a dispersed diaspora around the country, we got libertarians to gather and concentrate in one place. There was a whole voting process of participants figuring out what state that should be. Wyoming was another contender. I think that took second place. But what really made the difference was a lot of native Granite Staters in New Hampshire at the time who really made the effort to reach out and say, we want the Free State Project in New Hampshire. Even the governor of New Hampshire at the time extended that invitation to the Free State Project. And so New Hampshire was selected in the early 2000s, and over the course of the last 22 years, thousands and thousands of libertarians have made the move to New Hampshire as participants in the Free State Project. Many have gone on to get elected in local politics themselves. I mean, one great example is Jason Osborne, who's the current House Republican leader in the House of Representatives in Concord, who's been leading the charge on things like school choice and getting rid of the interest and dividends tax. So Free Staters have really made New Hampshire their home and are participating in the libertarian spirit that has already been here. And I know that I want to say to conservatives who are concerned about the influence of Massachusetts on the state of New Hampshire. I know that our governor recently ran a whole campaign, don't mass up New Hampshire. I think that's something that as Free Staters we very much agree with. We want to keep New Hampshire great, we want to keep New Hampshire free, and if you're concerned about the influence of outsiders, like progressive outsiders from Massachusetts, changing the politics and culture of New Hampshire, you should look at the Free State movement and Free Staters who are arriving here as reinforcements to help keep New Hampshire free.
A lot of people that I know see libertarians and the Green Party, as another example, as third parties. So from what I'm gathering, you want to put it into the Republican Party, basically, for New Hampshire.
Yeah, well, in that regard, I'll just speak for myself and my own view, because if you ask different Free Staters, some people are very loyal to the Libertarian Party, and that's the only vehicle that they want to use. But of course, I've long been an advocate for my entire political career that if you believe in libertarian ideas, that the Republican Party is the most effective vehicle to be able to win elections and to be able to actually put those ideas into practice. It was Ronald Reagan who said that libertarianism is the heart and soul of conservatism. And so I think that that's why individuals like, in the national Republican sphere, Ron Paul, Thomas Massey, and others have really found a home in the Republican Party and a lot of support from the Republican base. There's a lot of common overlap. And to libertarians who are sometimes skeptical of that, because certainly there can be disagreements with figures in the GOP, certainly, I'm no fan of certain past GOP presidents like George W. Bush and his Vice President Dick Cheney. I think that they were big government Republicans who got us unnecessarily into wars and eroded our civil liberties and our constitutional rights. I've always advocated to libertarians, if you don't want to see those folks running the country, then we need to engage within the two major party system, and we need to win primaries, and we need to change the trajectory of these parties. And I think that that's something that libertarians around the country have done successfully over the course of the last decade in state legislatures, but nowhere nearly so much as in New Hampshire.
Fun fact, you brought up Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey actually lived right here in Derry for a few years. His children were actually born at Parkland Hospital, like 5 minutes away. So
yeah, I'm actually told that when he, I know when he was up living in New Hampshire after his finishing his degree at MIT, he was actually I'm told he was a frequent customer actually at my father-in-law's country store. The Waterhouse Country Store in Wyndham, which was sold, about a decade ago. But when I learned that, I felt like it's a small world. So I will say, I didn't grow up in New Hampshire. I don't have family ties in New Hampshire. My family roots are in Maine. But I did marry into a New Hampshire family. My wife grew up here, so maybe that buy me a little credibility, even as I'm still a novice rookie in New Hampshire politics.
That was kind of a fun fact to sidetrack, but one question I have, why not the Democratic Party?
Well, I mean, I would say Look, if there was a libertarian who was more left-leaning, I'm more of a right-wing libertarian. But if there was a libertarian who was more left-leaning, who cared more about some of the issues where libertarians sometimes align with the Democratic Party, I would say, it's a two-party system. Use whatever vehicle is going to be most effective to get you there in a position to advocate for liberty. But I will say, from what I can tell, the Democratic Party in New Hampshire is very hostile to Free Staters and to liberty in general. The Democratic Party that I see today is not the Democratic Party that I remember when I was growing up in the early 2000s, which was the Democratic Party that cared about civil liberties, that cared about protecting free speech, that cared about resistance to unnecessary forever wars. All of those issues have been thrown out the window, and you see individuals in the, like the Joe Rogans of the world, by the way, who was a Ron Paul supporter in the day, have been pushed out. Those 2000 liberals have been pushed out, and many of them are finding more of a home in the broad coalition of the GOP. I think that's a reflection of how far the Democratic Party has fallen from the ideals that once made it a somewhat redeemable party. But I know that the pendulum swings, things change over time. Who knows? Maybe the Democrats will come around again. But it's a two-party system. I tell people use the vehicle that makes the most sense. Right now, I think that's the Republican Party. But if you're in a deep blue district where Republicans are never going to win, and you have some liberty issues that can appeal to Democratic base voters, then yeah, go ahead and try that. I don't think that'll ever be my path, though.
So you mentioned the Democratic Party leadership. They actually have a bit of an election going on soon, because their chairman, Ray Buckley, who has kind of been the kingpin for the New Hampshire Democratic Party for a long time, I believe since 2008 or 2009 he's been chair, and he's never had much challenge at all. He has two challengers this year. John Kuiper, who ran for governor, progressive Democrat, and Matt Stover, the longtime chair of the Rockingham County Democratic Party. This is the first time he's had challenges.
I'm surprised it's been so long. I don't know all these names and faces and personalities in New Hampshire politics like some, but I have noticed him. I noticed that when it was announced that I was coming over to the Free State Project and coming to New Hampshire, I noticed that he had already preemptively blocked me on Twitter, which I guess he's a reputation for blocking folks. But it really does seem like it's been failure after failure for him. I remember, boy, the letter that he sent to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. when Bobby Kennedy was coming to speak at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And I will give credit to Bobby Kennedy for shooting right back at Chairman Buckley, saying, you who embrace the worst kinds of censorship have no right to tell me who I can speak to. So kudos to Bobby Kennedy. Congratulations to him on his new position. And I think it really goes to show the fact that here you have someone who is a lifelong Democrat from a deeply entrenched Democratic family who's now under the Republican Party, the Health and Human Services Secretary. It really kind of goes to show how the Democratic Party has pushed away some of its best people, and how the Free State movement in New Hampshire has been a hub for connecting individuals like Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard with the larger libertarian movement, and with some of those overlapping factions within the Republican Party.
So I know that the New Hampshire Democratic Party has always been really hostile toward Free State movement. What about the Republican Party? Have they been open arms for the most part, or have they been hesitant?
Well, from what I can tell, I think that the story in New Hampshire is somewhat like what many libertarians have encountered in many state GOPs, which is that initially it was hostile. People kind of have kind of their little fiefdoms set up, and they don't necessarily like newcomers coming in and having new ideas for how to do things differently. But I think we're at a stage now where the libertarian wing of the New Hampshire GOP is such a huge part of the coalition now, certainly within the legislature, that it seems to me that a lot of the GOP establishment in New Hampshire has realized that they have to work with the Libertarians. I mean, certainly I watched from a distance. I saw on occasion when Governor Sununu would criticize the Libertarians and the GOP as they're not real Republicans or this or that. And then yet it always seemed to me that some of his proudest accomplishments, like school choice and cutting the interest and dividends tax or abolishing it, were many of the things that Libertarians in the legislature put on his desk for him to sign. So I think that gradually the GOP establishment, from what I can tell in New Hampshire, has realized that they need the Libertarians. We're part of their winning coalition, and we have some room to work together. But there's been no similar path made for folks in the Democratic Party. And you know what? That's probably why the Democrats seem to be in a permanent minority in the state legislature. One party made room for the Libertarians and expanded their coalition, and another party pushed people out. Push people out and find themselves unable to hold any majority.
And what has been your story coming here from, I'd say a lean blue state, not a safe blue, but a lean blue, to basically a swing state that is pretty heavily Republican at the state level, but at the federal level is pretty heavily Democrat. What has been your story moving here?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it was... I was so overwhelmed from the free state communities around the state, the warm welcome I've been receiving over the course of the whole last year. It took me a little time to phase into New Hampshire because I was still finishing up my last year of office last year. But I completed my move in time to cast my ballot in the New Hampshire elections for the first time. But it's been wonderful. At least as far as the free state communities go, and many of the conservatives and Republican communities that I've had a little bit of opportunity to interact with. Of course, it was somewhat amusing. Before I was even fully moved here, I found out there was this group, Granite State Matters. I don't know if you're familiar with them. My former state senator. They're apparently put together a public enemies list of every free stater they could identify, and it was so that was interesting. Before I even moved here, I find out I'm named on this enemies list of this progressive group that's trying to drive free staters out of New Hampshire. I find it interesting. It's the only time I hear progressives concerned about immigrants affecting the politics of the state. Only when we're shifting, when we're helping to reinforce kind of liberty in the state do they seem to be concerned. But overall, it's been very positive, and I'm really glad to be here, and I'm learning a lot about the free state of New Hampshire.
I don't remember that Granite Matters group, but I remember seeing a list of some kind. And I noticed a few of the people on that list weren't even free staters. They were just Liberty Republicans that lived here.
Yeah. It's nice to know what is it that it's quote attributed to Gandhi. I don't know who said it originally, but right, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And it is nice to know that the progressives in New Hampshire, they're not ignoring us and they're not laughing at us. They are seriously threatened by the fact that New Hampshire is shifting in a direction towards freedom and liberty. And you know what? For these progressives, I have no problem if Vermont wants to be a socialist state or Massachusetts wants to be a socialist state. There's 49 other states where you can go practice socialism. Let's have at least one state where we can live free and live up to the state motto and demonstrate that the ideas and policies grounded in freedom and liberty, like school choice, like defend the guard, like gun rights, that these are policies that work, and we can prove it here in New Hampshire.
So, and you mentioned all that, just keep building. We have a Republican governor, a Republican executive council. Both houses are Republican controlled. What do you think are going to be the biggest priorities for the House and Senate and all of them over the next 2 years? And how do you think we should defend our stances come 2026 when the Democrats will probably be very hungry to get at least one of those things back?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they'll try. I did just see that the National Democratic Party, as far as the state legislature goes, just took New Hampshire off their swing state list. So I'm sure that the Democrats in the state legislature will want to reclaim majorities in one of the two chambers, but I do think that it is increasingly out of reach for them. But as far as policies that I think something that there's tremendous common ground on between Liberty Republicans and other factions of the GOP, and something that Republicans have as clear a mandate on as anything is universal school choice. And I think the mandate for this is very clear because Republicans campaigned on this is what we are going to do if we win, and Democrats campaigned on this is what they're going to do if they win, right? Democrats campaigned on painting school choice as a negative, but the voters clearly didn't see it that way. The voters clearly voted for putting into power the party that was promising school choice. And I know that is a clear priority of the governor and the legislature, and I think it would be great to see New Hampshire complete the job.
So we have a lot of time left, but I want to leave a little time at the end for some dairy stuff. Do you have any closing statement you want to give to anyone?
I would just say to native Granite Staters who love liberty, if you're curious about the Free State Project, I know that Free Stater is often used as a term to describe people who move in from away to participate in promoting freedom and liberty in New Hampshire. But I like to think of the term Free Stater as applying to anyone who lives in New Hampshire who believes in the vision of a free state, who believes in the live free or die ethic that has defined New Hampshire for so long now. So for those who are curious, if you're here in New Hampshire, I would encourage you to come out and experience one of our Free State Project events. We've got two big events coming up in the next few months. We have the New Hampshire Liberty Forum taking place April 24th through the 27th. That's going to be at the Grapponi Conference Center in Concord. We're going to be exploring liberty for real, how we take ideas from theory into practice in the real world as we move towards establishing free societies. And then we also have in June our 22nd Porcupine Freedom Festival. This year's theme is Taste the Revolution. We're going to be highlighting a lot of the food freedom and the great food culture that exists here in New Hampshire. So that's something to come out for. We've got some great speakers coming out for that. You can find out more about that event at porkfest.com. That's pork with a C, not a K. And the New Hampshire Liberty Forum, you can find out more at nhlibertyforum.com.
Well, thank you for coming on. I'm going to spend the last few minutes talking about some local stuff because our election's coming up. So I'm just going to give you my, I guess, official list of endorsements. We have three town council seats, and remember, this is me. No one else. This is my endorsements. I can't even vote yet, so it's not going to matter. But most of you can vote, so this is who I think you should vote for. I support Jacob Coughlin for councilor at large. He's 20 years old. He's a student at MCC. He's interned for a lot of great organizations such as AFP and the Republican Governors Association. He's young, and yes, he doesn't have experience right now. But I think that we need a fresh voice on the town council. We have a lot of great town councilors on right now. In fact, I don't think we have a bad town councilor here. But I think we need someone new. I think we need someone that hasn't been in this town forever to take a seat there. So I support Jacob Coughlin in that field of 4 candidates. For the other 2 council seats that are unopposed, so it doesn't matter really who I endorse, but Charles Foote in District 2, my town councilor, and Randall Chase in District 4 are excellent people, and they will be excellent town councilors. For trustee of the trust funds, I'm supporting Jay Hildreth. He is challenging Craig Cunningham. Jay's worked in banking. He's perfect for the role. For Derry Public Library trustee, I think there's 4 people running across the 2 blocks. I support one of them, Andrea Lindsay. She's relatively new to Derry, comes from Wellesley, Mass. And similar to Mr. Brakey, she escaped a blue state. So she knows why it's important to have a Republican voice at the library. And for school board, which is, I think, the most important one, as it has been in the past few years. Again, because we had Wilbert Danger and Katie DeLay resign, we have 5 seats up. We have the 3 for 3 years and the 2 for 2 years. For the 3-year, I'm supporting 2 of the 3 people running. I support Brenda Willis long time incumbent. She's been there for 20-plus years, and I'm very happy she's running again. And I support Karen Rand, local realtor and one of our Republican delegates for the town. They're both going to be great, and for the 2-year spot, there's again 3 people running. I only support one of them, Richard Tripp, one of our state representatives. He's been involved in town for a while. He was a town councilor. He has a lot of institutional knowledge, so he's who I support there. And the warrant articles are what everyone's going to be following the most. Again, we have our budget, which I worked on as a member of the Fiscal Advisory Committee. I can tell you that if you decline the budget, it goes to the default budget. I will say, and to the credit of the school board, and I don't typically give credit to the school board, we worked really hard so that the actual budget is less than the default budget. I believe it's less by about 10 to 15 cents. So by voting for our budget, you're saving 10 to 15 cents. So I guess vote for it. It's high. It's going to be over 100 million something, I believe. Hate to see it, but that's what the school board does. So gotta live with it. And then I believe that's warrant article 3. Warrant article 2 is the construction bond. They're asking for 25 million to fix all the schools. They were asking 38 last year, so they did lower it when the 38 failed. The people wanted them to separate it over 2 years. They wanted 15 this year and 10 next year. And the school board rallied many of their people to do it all at once. Am I okay with the 25 million? Not really. But I think this is a time where I am willing to make a compromise and support it, which goes against most of the Republicans in town, because this school board is a pretty heavily, they're just not good. And I don't like the fact that I have to support it, but we tried to separate it at the deliberative session. Not enough of you went, and it failed. I don't like having to say that you have to blame yourself for it, but you really do. So I think we should support that warrant article. And the teacher's contract, I'll let you read the contract and make the decision on your own. All right, so again, the election is March 11th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Ackler Gymnasium. Go register to vote at Town Hall. I'm Anthony Henry. This has been America's Ass. Thank you for watching.